Hello and welcome to the Arts Our Education Talk It Up podcast, where we talk to national, state, and local leaders who are working to make arts education part of every student's life. I'm Jim Palmeriti, your host. This podcast is part of our exciting new series, Meet NCAS, in which I talk to representatives of the member organization of the National Coalition for Core Arts Standards, ARE Sponsoring Network. NCAS is a collaboration of 8 national arts and arts education organizations actively working to ensure quality, standards-based arts education opportunities for every student. So weekly, we're talking to their leadership about the organizations themselves and their perspectives about the foundational focus of NCAS, that is, K-12 arts education standards and their importance. So today we are talking to Dain Olsen, chair of the NCAS Media Arts Committee and a leading voice of the National Media Arts Education Initiative. Welcome, Dain.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, so glad you are here. And by the way, just to reiterate about NCAS, yes, we are Meet NCAS, and these are the organizations of NCAS. I will not name them for you, except only let you note them and bear them in mind, because we'll be talking to each one of these organizations in the futures. So at that, I'm going to stop my share and get started with our conversation. And let's just, Dain, talk about the National Media Arts Committee and the National Media Arts Education Initiative. So what can you tell us about it?
Well, Media Arts Committee was on that slide. We are one of the organizations of NCAS. It is not an official professional organization. It represents the discipline. Media arts is relatively new in that it's become more separate in this initiative and in the development of standards and so forth. Those standards were adopted across the country in over 30 states. And so they have this beginning step of establishing the discipline. Nevertheless, media arts is not an official subject area. Media arts, as you know, Jim, represents the digital arts, which is what you do here, Jim, and your podcast, editing of the video and so forth. Jim is a media artist now, and we're talking about digital arts being video, animation, special effects, visual effects, interactive design, interactive applications, creative code, virtual reality, all of the above. All these digital arts are represented within this discipline. So it's a big area, diverse area, very sophisticated, complex area. In terms of production, artistic production has a wide range from what you see in the mainstream media as well as artistic approaches. So, and it's a great offering and potentially beneficial to schools in that students can do these things that are common to their culture, support students in new ways to be expressive and be a part of this culture, and be able to construct messages as well as to really analyze them as critical audiences. So they're not just passive consumers, they're active producers. And so they become that kind of a participatory member of the society. And it's great in schools, does a lot of great things for students. Now, in terms of the national initiative, it's a big effort, a huge effort really to take the next step beyond the standards and start to establish the discipline within states and schools so that it is a separate subject, it has separate teachers, it has a separate credential, it's in ed code and so forth, and it becomes official then. Otherwise, it remains within other disciplines, maybe within a tech area. A tech teacher is teaching it. Some computer science teachers are teaching video game, for example. A lot of it is within visual arts. And so we break out of that and it becomes unto itself a discipline we can work on, establish and develop for itself. The Media Arts Committee is really there to bring this forward into a professional network of media arts teachers. So that's really our charge, is to let the teachers own this. We're a placeholder in that sense until a professional association is formed. Now, this initiative is really just to reach out and build that network of media arts educators and supporters. There's a wide range of people that are supportive and interested in the discipline. Mm-hmm. And then media arts educators need to sort of self-identify in this and say, I'm a media arts teacher and I need that kind of specific professional development. I want to grow my discipline and learn from others, exchange with them. And so we're networking, building these groups together and finding groups around the country and then bringing them into the Media Arts Committee. Media Arts Committee had been relatively small, not media arts educators in the committee. Now it's going to be mostly media arts educators and those people that are really supportive of the discipline. And therefore, it represents the discipline more as we build it and make decisions and grow. And ultimately, we hope soon to develop this national organization. And then to establish the discipline, for example, in California, I'm proposing legislation to do that final step of bringing it into educational code and getting it a credential. And so all the work that needs to happen for that is going to be a model for other states to also bring it in as an official subject area.
So I love that, the idea that media arts, we can get into the standards question in a minute, will have its own discrete course codes because there is, I assume, an aesthetic also involved that needs to be addressed within those individual courses, which is why, you know, in my day, it's of course all of the technology lived in the AV department, in the janitor's closet, maybe, you know.
Right.
So I have to ask, and I was just thinking about this because it's so prominent right now, is the new wave of artificial intelligence have a role here in media arts as well? I think it's
absolutely, you know, it's
intriguing.
something that we have to contend with, work with, understand, bring it forward, see how it can benefit the discipline. Rather than sort of displace people out of the discipline. It's really empower, you know, media arts is sort of a democratizing discipline. It brings more people in to be able to do more things. Jim, you're an example of that. You are now a media producer. You know, it's empowered you in that sense to be this voice on the internet. And so you look at it that way, AI is just another tool that allows us to support us in doing new things in new ways and more people to do things. I'm also an example of that in that I love music production, and especially digital music production. Otherwise, you know, if I was just left to play a violin, I might not be such a great musician. But the idea here is that these tools are not a threat. They're a means to support our growth and our expansion of what we can do.
So you had mentioned earlier that something like 30 states had actually endorsed or adopted or adapted the National Core National Arts Standards that were released in 2014. So why are media arts standards important to K-12 arts education?
That's a great question. Standards really made media arts happen, and as I said, in that first step. Otherwise, it just wouldn't have this sort of central focus to really bring the discipline into coherence, you know, as a distinct discipline. And once those standards were established, people really had the sense of what it was about, why it needed to be distinct, that it did have this different aesthetic, as you say. And so that really was highlighted in the development of those disciplines, in the development of those standards. You know, a group of people around the country coming together and deciding what is media arts exactly, how is it taught in these very specific terms, and developmentally, how is it developed among students. So it brings a lot of precision and coherence to the discipline, and it was our first step towards establishment. Otherwise, it would just not congeal in the way that it did, and then kind of adopted by states in a distinct manner.
You said it really.
Without the standards, the discipline has no agreed body of knowledge. People are just sort of teaching whatever and however they want. And there's a lot of benefits to that.
You said a key thing about that established body of knowledge and I guess skill. And the other key word I heard was developmental. So the notion, like all standards, there are certain things I assume that students need to know and know how to do at different grade levels, different stages of their education career. Does that make sense for media arts as well?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So, yeah, in every regard, in the steps of the process, a kindergartner is going to be much different than a fifth grader, much different than an accomplished student in the high school level. And so you do have these gradations of development that are achievable at these different areas. It's a lot of work to come to a decision in terms of what that development looks like. And I would say the standards are flexible in terms of how you use them. You may not always feel you're able to bring in, say, proficient level with a class that's in high school. You might have to go to a lower level standard to think about that beginning student, because that student may not have had any experience in doing it before. So we see them less as punitive and sort of exclusionary and more inclusive, flexible, work with what you have and grow from where you are, that sort of thing. So it's in that sense, don't see it as a new stricture on what you're doing or prescriptive to what you're supposed to do.
So that really leads right to our next question, which is how can media arts standards help educators shape their curriculum and their teaching?
Yeah, for teachers, this is great. I mean, you have a lot of work done for you. If you had no standards, you'd be reinventing the wheel, essentially. So this gives you these achievable learning goals for students. It's a way to figure out exactly what you want to teach, how you target it. It gives you a frame for everything that you should incorporate into your course, so you're not questioning, am I really doing this correctly? What am I forgetting? For example, media literacy is denoted in the discipline over several grade levels. And teachers may neglect to include media literacy because they're so focused on the production process, which is so complex and intensive, that they forget about the critical audience that they need to develop within students. This gives them the way of aligning and articulating their curriculum in a way. It assists with research into the discipline and development of more improved educational programs. It gives a framework for teachers so they really comprehensively address the discipline.
So
it gives them a certain amount of confidence in the classroom.
How would you advise a teacher who is seeking to create a media arts program or just to have a dedicated media arts course make the case to advocate on behalf of such a program where none exists? That's a kind of a curveball question for you, but I thought I would ask you that.
Well, media arts brings tremendous benefits to a school. I always develop my programs as ways to support the school, to support what the school is doing. Media arts can be used so many ways to benefit that community. For example, you can be documenting what's happening within the school. It can be part of a news program. You can do PR sorts of media about your school. You can do recruitment videos for the school. I did this every time that I was in a school. I would offer those kinds of productions to support the school so that administrators valued the program and supported the program. And they understood it wasn't just me in my classroom doing what I want. It's how I can benefit the whole school community. So also yearbook, would be included under media arts and being graphic design. I did that for a number of years in one school that I was at. And, that's a tremendous offering. And thereby you are sort of at the cultural heart of the school. You're developing that culture. And then you have leaders within that class who are leaders within the school in total. And you are really building the themes for the school in that year. So media arts can function in that way to give a really central component to the school that gives the school a sense of who they are and a reflection of the year and the processes going on within their school, and also can work with the other arts disciplines and promote their programs. We always did things with theater, for example, having media in their productions, documenting their productions, and a means for them to branch out into filmmaking, for example. We could work together. So, it does a lot of things for a lot of different components of the school. It's not an isolated kind of program. It's very connected.
I love that. Excuse me, because it makes media arts sort of potentially the town community town hall.
Exactly.
That can serve so many different constituents and fill so many different needs. So this has been great, but I want to give you the opportunity to, in our short time together, what is the most misunderstood as a wrap-up thing about media arts that people just need to understand, who maybe don't have any kind of experience with that, or who believe that we already do that in another class? We don't need it as a separate discipline.
Well, that's a confusing thing that I'd like to clarify. Establishing media arts doesn't take it away from other disciplines. It's way too big. It's way too interconnected. It's sort of pervasive in our society, right? It's within visual arts. It's within theater. It combines all of those. It brings them into media arts. Media arts is an inter-arts discipline. It really combines them in ways where you can see them all together. You can see visual, theater, dance, all in one production, a media arts production. And so in that sense, it enhances and amplifies the other arts disciplines. Nevertheless, it needs to be distinct because it is so sophisticated and complex, and it's multimodal. That's really the core of the discipline, is the combination of these elements from movement, light, sound, text, story, those sorts of things. We access those disciplines as elements and we combine them. That's really at the heart of the discipline. And because it's multimodal, no, you would not filter it through visual arts. Visual arts is very focused on image and vision. And I think in terms of sound myself, that's how I approach my media production, is through sound production. And then I add visual components to that. So I really resent the idea that, media arts need to stay within visual arts. It cannot develop for its own particular capabilities and its ultimate potential within schools if it's just filtered through these different areas that can't bring it into a coherent central area for research and development.
Thank you for being here. And we've learned some things about media arts today that we need to know. And I'm going to share my screen again and do some wrap up here. So
thanks a lot, Jim. Thanks for having me.
It's so important for us to talk about media arts because they're not getting the attention they need, and we're hoping that we're going to change that through the National Coalition for Arts Standards. So I'm going to reshare my screen, and so If you want to know more about the National Coalition for Arts Standards, go to www.nationalartsstandards.org. And Dain and his associates have created this amazing websites for the Media Arts Education Initiative at mediaartsedu.org. You can learn so much more about the work that he and his colleagues are doing, and you can get in touch, and you can join the organization, right? Is that right?
Yeah. Please join us. We want everybody who is supportive of media arts to help us out and make this happen. All
right. So, Dain, thanks again for being here. And just to put a wrap on it, Meet NCAS is a weekly podcast series. We'll be talking next to Mario Rosero of the National Arts Education Association. And remember, arts are education for everyone. So sign the ARE pledge indicating your support for arts education. Urge your school board to pass the ARE resolution to fund arts education, including media arts, in the 2023-24 school year, and donate. Yes, you can donate to arts education to help us share the message at www.artsareducation.org. At that, signing off, and we will see you the next time.
Bye-bye.